And that's what climate change is about. It is literally, not figuratively, a clear and present danger.
We are in the beginning of a mass extinction.
The ability of CO2 to do the heavy work of creating a climate catastrophe is almost nil at this point.
The price of oil has been artificially elevated to the point of insanity.
That's not how you power a modern industrial system.
The ultimate goal of this renewable energy, plan is to reach the exact same point that we're at now.
You know who's tried that? Germany. 7 straight days of no wind for Germany. Their factories are shutting down.
They really do act like weather didn't happen prior to 1910.
Today is Friday.
All right. Yes. Thank you, Greta. Today is Friday, meaning it is time for Climate Change Roundtable. I'm excited for today's episode, frankly, because this morning Joe Biden gave his speech at the UN climate conference. Literally, it concluded maybe 30, 40 minutes ago. So in the past 30 to 40 minutes, we've been just digging through it as fast as humanly possible and wanted to essentially dedicate the whole show to what Biden said and what we should take from it. So before we do get into that, and there's some interesting stuff in there, let me introduce everyone on the show today, starting with Sterling. Sterling, welcome back to the show 2 weeks in a row. How you doing?
Doing well.
Nice. Good to have you
here.
Late
night election watching. I'm caught up on my sleep now.
Yeah, right. Oh man, catching up on sleep is something I'm excited to do this weekend. Anthony Watts. Anthony, have you been paying attention, a lot of attention to COP27, or are you just this is just making me angrier as a human being when I look?
Well, I've lived through 26 other COPs, and this isn't even good as some of the reruns on TV.
Oh man, I hope you're not watching COP reruns. That
old reruns of Star Trek and the Beverly Hillbillies are better than this.
I back the blue, but this is one COP I can't get behind.
That's funny. That was pretty creative, Sterling. And Linnea, have you subjected yourself to too much of COP27, or is the midterms enough?
Dabbling in a little bit of both, just to make sure that not only do you not sleep Tuesday night, you also can't stay awake the next day watching speeches that people are giving and trying to keep up with stuff. I've been stalking what John Kerry has been up to, because I'm just beside myself that man is allowed in public.
Yeah.
I think that when they came up with the term WASP, Kerry was literally the first person that comes up in the dictionary. So I don't know.
Oh man, I feel like there's a Beto O'Rourke joke to make out of that. I don't have it right now, but it doesn't matter.
I can get behind defund COP.
Defund COP. Oh. Oh man, that's 2 good ones in a row, Sterling. Nice wordplay. I like it. So I mean, yeah, there is just we were going to talk about the midterms and COP and all that, and we really did just kind of hone in on one thing this morning. So let's get into it. First, let me just go ahead and look at what we have here to start with. I mean, I'm thinking you guys want to just start with some of Biden's clips and kind of get into dissecting what he said?
Yeah, let's start with the beginning, because he that's where he talks about the science. The rest is all, but the science he talks at the beginning.
Okay. Yeah. So let's go with Biden energy flub clip. The first one that we have in the back end.
To help make the transition to a low-carbon future more affordable for everyone, accelerate decarbonation beyond our borders. In fact, the International Energy Agency recently concluded that our significant climate investment will, quote, help turbocharge turbocharge the emerging global clean energy economy. I was reading their quote. Sorry.
Turbocharged.
Our mumbler in chief.
Man, they're turbocharging the wrong thing. It's Biden that could really use some caffeine. Is he drunk? Gary says, slurring. No, that would be Nancy. Biden's just old.
They're doing the best they can with poor Joe Biden.
With Nancy, it's funny. With Joe, it's a little funny, but it's like, come on, can we just let this guy eat some pudding and move on?
I honestly don't think it's funny at all. I think it's so sad. This is the man who represents the United States on at home and in public forums abroad, and it's just discouraging to see that performance. Yeah. Well, it's not just what he says; it's how to say it. And sharper people, faster minds, making policies and making these really profound decisions for the United States and the world.
Well, it could be worse. Our figurehead could be Justin Trudeau.
Oh God. I don't know. It's like I see the sad and the funny. The sad would be like what you said, Sterling, just related to actually like all the implications of this. The funny is just more the it's mostly sad, but just I guess what it is like Biden has passed so many policies throughout his career which have hurt so many people, including like the crime bills back like earlier on in his political career. I'm not even talking about the right now, and the right now is not good. Wow. So while like there is a degree of like, yeah, they're just throwing this old man out there that shouldn't be there. I'm slamming the table. Sorry, I'm fired up. Yeah.
He's never lived in the real world, though. He's never held a real job. He's never done anything for real. He's only existed in the bubble of government throughout his entire life. And therefore, he has no idea what the common person is going through.
Yeah, but it's like, it's not even that. It's like, he's hurt the common person a lot in his career. Like the crime bill, I believe he passed in the 70s, just threw so many black people in jail. And like right now, he says during the run-up to his election, like, if you ain't black, if you don't vote for Biden. Like, so I don't feel bad for him just because he's a horrible human being that ruined a lot of people's lives. But I feel bad.
No, I don't feel bad for him. Yeah, I feel bad for the country. I'm sitting there, if I'm China's premier watching right now, or some other foreign dictator, I'm just, doing this, licking my chops, waiting to give him the next call and say, hey, we need to do this. And he won't be too slow to catch how it's benefiting me and shafting America.
Yeah, no, I hear that.
Andy.
Yeah, it's like coming up to your relative in the nursing home with Alzheimer's and saying, hey, we need to change your will. It's like, okay. If you say so, sounds good to me.
I do want to point out that it's kind of hard to tell what he says there, but it at one point it did kind of sound like he wants to fix the carbonation of countries outside of his outside of our border. I think he meant the decarbonization.
I don't know.
No, he wants to ship them more Coke products.
Yeah,
that's what it sounded like to me. We need to increase carbonation outside of our.
I got us Coca-Cola in Mexico, and it was just not nearly bubbly enough. This is a problem.
Seltzer. You got to get some seltzer.
I actually agree with you fully.
Yeah. Maybe he'll give up his Corvette as a way of showing that he's serious about it.
Fat chance. All right, so we got the energy flub. We got Biden extreme weather. Let's just keep going. We got a ton of clips here. Let's just keep going one at a time. Jim, go ahead and play Biden extreme weather.
To avert climate catastrophe and seize a new clean energy economy, not only as an imperative for our present and future, but through the eyes of history. According to the World Meteorological Organization, the past 8 years have been the warmest on record. In the United States, we're seeing historic drought and wildfires in the West, devastating hurricanes and storms in the East. Here in Africa, home to many nations considered most vulnerable to climate change, food insecurity. Hunger follows 4 years of intense drought in the Horn of Africa. Meanwhile, the Niger River in West Africa, swollen because of more intense rainfall, is wreaking havoc on fishing and farming communities. In Nigeria, flooding has recently killed 600 people. 1.3 million more are displaced. Seasonal livestock migration routes have been used for hundreds of years. are being altered, increasing the risk of conflict between herders and local farming communities. The climate crisis is about human security.
Now, the climate crisis is about brainwashing, you old fart. It's just they're making the same mistakes again, like as if these droughts never happened before in history, that they're entirely new to humanity. Well, I'm sorry. Weather has never been kind to humanity, ever. It's been attacking us since the beginning of time, and it's still going to happen that way. Weather is not climate. And the fact that these things are happening around the world is not anything new. The only thing that's new is that we're more aware of it than we used to be 50 years ago, because, we've got things like cell phones on every corner of the planet, every nook and cranny. Live cell phones can report on severe weather. And, we've got 24-hour news, and we've got the internet and all these things. We're more aware of what's going on in the world than we were 50 years ago. So we have a bias in reporting. We don't have a bias necessarily in weather. Weather is always going to create storms and droughts and excessive rainfall and so on. To say that it's driven by climate change is just completely stupid.
Yeah.
But, more importantly, we don't have the news reporting that we have now. At no time in the past has there ever been news reporting like we have now. But we do have data. And we do have peer-reviewed journal articles that have looked at evidence. And guess what? Droughts aren't more severe in California now than they've ever been in history. That's a lie. When he says that, when the data is out there, when it's been published, when people have known for years, when they've talked about it before, and he says that, he's not making a mistake. He's lying, because when the evidence exists and you ignore it, that's the same thing. When he says storm, he points to storm. Oh, hurricanes. Yep, we have something called a hurricane season every year. And guess what? This hurricane season has been below average. But he cites the one bad hurricane and says, oh, well, we had a bad hurricane. Well, we did. We had a bad hurricane. It's not uncommon to have a bad hurricane in hurricane season, but it's below average this year for the number of named storms, contrary to what they were predicting. So we actually have data. It's not just, I don't give him the benefit of the doubt on this. He's not making mistakes. He's telling lies. It's propaganda to promote what he says later about all the things we're doing to save you. Africa has never had drought before, multi-year droughts. I remember in the 70s and 80s growing up watching the pleas from Ethiopia with children starving because of droughts. It happens, like Anthony says, it's called weather, folks, and it's happened throughout history, and there's no evidence that hurricanes, droughts, flooding, he cites the flooding, or that hunger, certainly not that hunger is worse now than ever before, because it's not. And why we've had a bad year this year, well, we got a little thing called a war going on in Ukraine where a lot of product is not being shipped out. That's one thing going on.
Another thing that I find interesting about the way that they frame this issue, especially when he starts citing different weather events happening in Africa. Well, of course, no one wants to downplay how difficult these things are and how awfully negatively impactful these storms can be, especially to communities that aren't very well developed. But I can be here in this part of South Carolina and have 75-degree sunny weather. And barely 100 miles away, they could have wildly different weather up in the northern part of the state where it's a little bit higher altitude. They talk like Africa isn't a continent that stretches 2 hemispheres of the globe. Like it would be unusual. It would be indicative of something really bad going on if the weather was the same across all of Africa.
Yeah.
That would be alarming if you want to talk about climate alarm. you would really have to worry then. But the idea that there could be a drought, the idea that there's a drought somewhere like Kenya at the same time as they're getting inundated with floodwaters in like Central Africa, that shouldn't be a surprise to anyone.
Also, this reminds me of your bit in the opening video where it's like they act like weather started 20
Right.
years ago. Yeah, it's like that.
They really do.
Yeah, which
And I know that they know it hasn't.
yeah, oh yeah.
You know that they're leveraging this stuff on purpose because they know full well that Africa covers multiple biomes. And this is something we used to talk about in school, was the idea of a biome, the idea that you had different climate and weather patterns
That's been deemed
and
racist,
wildlife
discussing that. We can't.
within the same state, right? Like where I live now is kind of a little bit swampy coastal lowland estuary junk. And then just a few, not even into North Carolina, you have mountains and high altitude type pine forests. You cannot look at the entire continent of Africa and say, look, the weather is this way here, but it's this way over there. This is indicative of really bad climate change. That's insane to use that as an example.
Yep, it is. I want to point out this graph here that I provided. This is from a peer-reviewed study from Cook et al. And they basically went and looked at tree rings all the way back, tree rings and other types of proxies, all the way back to, the year 800. And they found that there were 200-year-long droughts in California, well before carbon dioxide ever became a blip on anybody's radar. It happened naturally. And we've been very fortunate that since the year 1500 to the present, we've been in a wetter phase than the drier phase that happened between 800 and 1500. And yet they're willing to blame that little blip of drought that we've had in the past few years on man-made climate change. It's just crazy. Now, in 1850, when California became a state, all of a sudden, we had a very short period of drought, about a decade or so, and that was a normal variation. But look, I've got another graphic here that talks about the catastrophic flooding that happened in Sacramento, California in 1862. Old Sacramento still exists today, and you can go down there and see the high water marks on these buildings. This is a drawing of what it looked like in 1862 in downtown Sacramento. They didn't have photography available, but that's what it looked like on J Street. Catastrophic flooding from the Sacramento River, just a few years after they had drought. Variations like this due to weather are normal.
Mm-hmm. And by the way,
go ahead.
No, well, I was just gonna say, and by the way, that flood in Sacramento happened when they didn't have huge amounts of impervious surfaces channeling water, at rapid speeds, flooding things. They didn't have concrete everywhere. They didn't have the sewers that filled and backed up. This is when the water could still soak into the earth largely.
Right. They had no flood control measures whatsoever. And this drought actually caused them to start, this flood caused them to put in flood control measures. And so Sacramento doesn't have these problems today because we adapted and fixed it, which is what we can do in the future for anything that happens weather-wise. We can adapt and we can fix it, whether it's, flooding, whether it's due to things like, sea level rise. I mean, look at Boston. Boston's been around since before the American Revolution, and the sea level has gone up and up and up during that time, all the way to the present. They've adapted to it. The whole city's not underwater. These worries that they make are completely ridiculous.
I mean, in fact, Boston has a larger landmass now than it did at the Revolution because they filled in a lot of the harbor.
Exactly.
A lot of the place you go down to the harbor now, there are buildings that are built up on rock where they filled in water. At the port.
Right. Right. The whole premise of these climate change zealots is that we're at the mercy. Oh no, it's going to kill us. They don't pay any attention to the fact that we are adaptable and have adapted all through history. We're smart. We're smarter than that.
I was just gonna say, I mentioned last week about how a lot of people think, we're kumbaya with the climate and it doesn't pose any, it does pose threats to humanity. It's just we can't control it, so we have to adapt to it. I mean, like, go back to early tribal times. They weren't singing Kumbaya. They were doing like the rain dance and trying to make sure that they didn't get stormed on and die that night. Like it's just the idea that, you know, if we can control it and like the climate and and humanity are working in tandem together and not like this is something that we need to adapt to is just a false premise in and of itself. You just mentioned something that I do want to get on screen because I made a video this week and I showed climate related deaths from 1920 to today. So it's going to take me a second to get there. But while I pull it up, one thing we haven't mentioned yet is while Biden was talking, he said like the last 8 years have been the hottest ever on record. Now, first, Anthony, you've gone through the surface temperature stations and how just faulty they are. But two, and this is the thing that a lot of people don't know about, is when they say on record, they're talking about from like, if one of you knows like the exact year, please fill it in here. But like, is it the 1920s or something? When we're coming out of an ice age,
A little ice age.
yeah. So the record is literally like coming out of an ice age, which means that temperatures are going to increase. That's just, if you look at the like history of the Earth from its inception to today, when ice ages end, it generally gets warm after, and they say this is the record we're going to look at. And it's always getting hotter. It's like, well, yeah, that's the most disingenuous way of framing this just possible. But I'm going to pull up the deaths since 1920 to today due to climate-related deaths. So give me a second if you all want to say something in the interim.
What we need is to invent time travel. Sorry.
Yeah,
so
right.
that people can go back to the little ice age and go starve of a potato famine or something.
Yeah, right.
See how they like that climate.
That'll
My
solve tickets.
concern. My concern
Experience
is
the
if we
potato famine for yourself.
my concern is that if we invented the time travel, the elites would control it, and they'd go back and prevent the internal combustion engine from ever being introduced. And so we'd still have dung and dead horses piling up in our streets, giving us cholera, and you know, things that are now forests would still be fields to feed all those horses and cattle. It's it would only work if I could control the time machine.
Yeah, we're going to pretend like it's the case that we have a prime directive and anyone who steps off the track to mess with history gets electrocuted to death.
That works. Yeah. That's worked with every science fiction film ever to explore the issue.
Timeline, definitely. Yeah.
Jim had a good comment here. If we get rid of cars, you know, and, you know, switch towards horses and buggies, that's going to be tough for Biden's methane restriction plan. I saw that. I'm like, that's pretty good. But all right. So here's the chart.
I'm sure they'll come up with some kind of a device you can install on your horse. I'm sure.
Well, they've already got diapers for them now. Used to when I rode carriages when I was younger, they didn't have diapers, but now all the horses have diapers.
It's great to change. Good advancement. I fully support that. All right, so here's the chart I wanted to mention, and this is climate-related deaths from 1920 to today. And I mean, you don't have to look at this for long just to see that it's dropping drastically, and this is population adjusted. But it's hard to look at this here and say that the climate emergency is getting worse when the factor of like decrease in deaths is by about 13,000%. It's just, yeah, they're in the comments 13,000%. Like how and if we showed this chart just on screen with any CNN broadcast where Don Lemon's freaking out about the world ending and just asked him like, okay, could you refute this for us? Like, we're not even going to provide an argument. We just want you to provide an argument why this still tells us that there's some catastrophe coming. And with all the articles and headlines are like, this many people are already dying. It's getting this much worse. I don't think he could do it. Or if he did, I think it would go viral because it would be a very poor job.
Oh, I don't know. I think he'd say, oh, statistics don't tell the whole. People lie with statistics. How do I know these are true?
That is true. People do lie with statistics.
Yeah.
I still don't think that would be the most effective argument in the world. But yeah, I mean, that's all I wanted to add here. I mean, do any of you have anything to add on to this?
Oh, it just reminds me of the Career Builder ad from the Super Bowl a few years ago where they had, I just sent you a link to it, where they have these monkeys in the boardroom and they're jumping up and down, you know, because the growth is fantastic. It's like because they got the graph turned upside down. Well, it's like if we turn this graph the other way, It's exactly how they view the world right now. It's like they think this graph is inverted. Seriously.
I mean, they have done a good job of taking data and inverting it through statistical manipulation. So, I mean, it's a reasonable thought.
That's the problem with climate alarmists. They don't look at reality. They only look at what they believe is happening, not what actually is happening. And so in their mind, these kinds of graphs are wrong. They're completely inverted because our belief system is completely different. They don't respond to facts very well.
Well, and when the data undermines their arguments, they fiddle with the data.
Yeah.
It's the scientific method says you propose a hypothesis, and then you test it against reality. And the more it's confirmed, the more likely your hypothesis is to be true. And the more it's disconfirmed, the more things are the opposite of what you predict, the less likely it is to be confirmed. Climate change doesn't work like that.
There it is. There it is.
We don't have any audio if they're supposed to be.
See?
Well, if you can't get the audio, that's
wait. Pull it back for one quick second. Just
Hey guys.
Cool.
Just thought you might want to know. Sales aren't up. They're down.
Oh man,
he's.
This is exactly how they view the world, and the people that don't go along with it, like that poor guy.
And then I think he then goes over
ostracized.
Yeah, that was honestly a pretty great analogy for this that had nothing to do with it. I liked that. All right. Let's see. So clips we have.
You got these protesters there at COP27 saying people should go to jail or die if they don't if they're climate deniers.
Yeah, I mean, Jim, I believe, posted we have like a climate Slack group that all of us talk in, and Jim was producing in the background today, which you all know Jim. A lot of you that watch the show, thank you to him for doing what I usually do. He sent something where there was a protester at COP27 holding up a sign that said something along the lines of, if you can maybe get the picture, Jim, like climate deniers should be killed or something like that.
Said climate deniers should get the death penalty.
Okay, the death penalty. Yeah, I mean, well, I guess on the bright side, you'll be in purgatory for 27 years awaiting your death, but that's not a bright side. But yeah, no, I mean that's
the thing is, if you did it to climate deniers, most of the people, the 20,000 people at the UN's conference right now would go under the axe, right? They go to the guillotine because they're the ones denying science.
Yeah, right.
They're the ones denying the science.
I was looking through articles this morning, just trying to
maybe he's onto something. Maybe he's onto something.
I'm pretty sure he wasn't aimed at them, but his words may come back to bite him.
I'm certain of it, but
not that I support putting down climate deniers or anything. Maybe putting them in some the joke I was about to make was horribly offensive. I'm just not going to do it. I'll save it for later.
Let's not do that.
Yeah, I've made it once before. All right, so
we got some re-education camps that we can set up.
I see. I don't know. I think the issue is that they really need to concentrate more, and a camp that focuses on that sort of thing is really where they could learn. But all right, so let's continue. We got Biden, and Linnea is just shaking her head right now at me. I like it. It amuses me. What? I'm Jewish. Come on. All right, so we got a Biden ending clip. Yeah, I want to hear how he ends the speech. Let's go ahead and play that.
President Biden speaking in Egypt at the COP27 conference.
So let's reach out and take the future in our hands and make the world we wish to see and that we know we need. A planet preserved for generations to come. An economy powered by clean, diversified, secure energy sources. Opportunities unlocked through innovation and cooperation to deliver equitable, more prosperous, more stable, and more just world for our children. That's why we're here. That is what we're working toward. And we can do it together, I am confident. Thank you, thank you, thank you. May God bless you all.
Who wants to take a stab at it? Linnea, what do you have to say?
I mean, like with everything else, like one of our viewers said earlier, the solution is always the same. Give me more of your money.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
So
No matter
it's all
the
it's all
problem.
just
yeah,
like sales pitches, and it's tiresome.
Yeah, no matter the
I
problem, the solution is always bigger government. And the one thing I can say for sure about that is if he got his wish, the design that he wants for the world, the earth would not be better off. Now, I'm not talking about human beings. I'm talking about nature would not be better off. There would be strip mines everywhere for rare earth metals. There would be entire continents covered with wind turbines, killing birds at a rapid pace and bats. There would be solar panels blocking the sunlight from the soil and killing all the animals beneath it. That's his vision, and somehow he thinks that's a better world.
Sterling, I'm going to disagree with you.
Oh,
I
hell
think
yeah.
that they legitimately intend and understand that the renewables cannot match our current energy consumption globally. I think they're fully aware of that. I think that they intend to greatly reduce available energy consumption.
Yeah.
And the difference is it's going to be people like you and me who are not able to turn their electricity on during the day. But Joe Biden, as long as he's still around, will never see a day without electricity.
I mean, yeah, he's going to be hooked up to so many machines. Like he's not going to be able to live a day without electricity.
They want to make all the world. But the problem is they want to make all the world North Korea at night when you fly over it with a satellite, where it's really just this dark space with nothing there, or the Amazon. But to get there, they have to cover continents with wind turbines and solar panels. I mean, I agree with Linnea. Actually, we don't disagree. I agree with Linnea that they know that they're lying, that they'll be the elites and they'll still have their stuff. I'm just saying he lays out a vision. He claims this is what he wants. Well, if he gets what he says he wants, not what he truly wants, but what he says he wants, it will destroy the environment. Yeah. Species will go extinct at an even faster rate. And so that's the thing is if environmentalists knew, because environmentalists are pushing this the most, if they knew what the environment would really look like after their pipe dream came true, I can't believe that the average environmentalist, not the leadership, would embrace it.
Well, and you see, a few, was it last year, the year before, where, gosh, I can't remember the name of our terrible documentary friend.
Michael Moore.
Michael Moore did a documentary discussing how bad wind and solar are for the environment.
Yeah.
So I think that some of them do catch on, but they are a tiny voice compared to the cash that's behind the more mainstream push. And so, you're right, Sterling. If they knew that it was so bad, if, the high school kids that this kind of curriculum is being pushed on knew the extent of what it was that they were being pitched, then they would probably have something negative to say about it too. But if you're not presented with the facts about the engineering and the realistic scope of what would need to happen, there's no way that you could possibly have an understanding of how much it's going to take.
I feel like we should respond to this comment here. Linnea's right. The elites will thrive. Fully agree there. That absolutely is a part of this. I don't think mass extinction of humans is part of the goal. I mean, that's where cue Dr. Evil. I
think this might be right.
Really?
You watch Michael Moore's film. He does say wind, solar, biomass, bad for the environment. What you got to do is control population.
True. I guess, and I'm not disagreeing.
We admire China because they population.
Yeah. So I'm not agreeing with population control not being part of this movement. I guess while that's an abhorrent view, like a truly disgusting view, and after seeing Yeonmi Park talk last week, who was a North Korean escapee defector or whatever, she kind of went into what population control has done to China and how it's led to slave trades and horrible stuff. But I would more say that it's not about extinction for the human race. It is about population control, and it's largely about just giving the people that direct that population control the greatest amount of power potentially in human history, like over a large group of people. But if the entire humanity goes extinct, that's
the problem.
We lost you.
Yeah. Well, anyway,
problem is if you don't,
we're losing you, Sterling. Let Anthony make his comment, and hopefully your connection will kind of fix itself by then.
Yeah, they're talking about all these changes that are required, and yet they're completely ignoring the fact that unless they get China and India on board with this stuff, they're not going to get anything in terms of reductions. Although the United States has reduced CO2 significantly over the last decade, they haven't done anything like that in China and India. And so India is totally aware of this because their economy is building on coal and oil. And so they have basically said, well, okay, we'll go along with the whole climate thing. There's this article in Bloomberg that shows them basically asking for extortion money, if we can see that. There it is. India wants $1 trillion before it raises targets to cut emissions. So it goes back to another thing about climate. Climate seems to be more about wealth distribution because the fools that are running the UN and the governments will say, okay, let's just give India some money so that they can reduce their emissions. And yet nothing will happen. It's just like when we say to China, we'll do this. And then China says, yes, we'll do that. And then completely ignores it. China will lie to your face in the process and go about their business because they have their 5-year and their 10-year plan, just like the Soviets did. They're not going to pay attention. And so it all boils down to a Dr. Evil moment. They're basically asking for that $1 trillion and they're not even ashamed about it.
Yeah. And, I read some, it was like I was reading some articles this morning related to, it eluded me. I was honestly, someone made a South Park reference in the comments, and when someone makes a South Park reference, I just get excited and it takes over. If it comes back to me, I'll mention it. But so that was an older one, and then this year we have Africa doing something. Oh no, I got it. So I was reading an article this morning, and it was about individual countries and their CO2, their carbon dioxide emissions reductions or increases in the last year. And what the article said, I can't remember where it was from, was that the United States is expected to have gone up in emissions. But on the bright side, China and Russia are expected to report minor decreases in their carbon dioxide emissions in this last year. And I don't have the data in front of me. And if I did, I don't really trust data that comes from there. But does anyone believe that they're reducing their emissions right now? Like, we hear that they're building coal plants. I mean, Sterling, I'm sure you have an opinion on this.
I don't know if I'm coming through. You said you lost me. But,
yo, you're back. We're hearing you. Good. Yeah.
Okay. No, that's wrong. If they report it, it's a lie.
Yeah.
From China. It may be from China, but their emissions are going up and up and up because they're digging new mines, they're importing more coal, and they're burning more coal. They're defunding a lot of their renewables. They're cutting the subsidies for that because their economy started to slow. It's still got some growth that we could admire, but it's starting to slow, and they don't like that because they got a lot of people. I want to go back to the population for a second.
Yeah.
Population demands energy, and you can't reach the 1850 goals that they have, 1840 goals of net zero. That's what net zero would be, is going back to 1840s. You can't reach that without diminishing the population. That's why philosophers like Arnie Knott said, the ideal human population is 200 million. Okay, how do you get there? It's not going to be done through, okay, we only allow you to have one child. That doesn't get you to 200 million people. That still is adding people, especially since people's lives are growing longer. What you get is euthanasia cults in countries where they say, oh, we're going to let people choose euthanasia. And if they can't choose it for themselves, maybe we'll choose it for them.
I'll point out that the
you only
movie
get
Soylent
population
Green-
down. You only get population down if you exterminate some people. If people die sooner, not through controlling birth rates at a lower rate at some time, because that will still grow population for some time into the future. It won't double it as much, but it'll still grow it. So you can't reach their goals without literally diminishing population somehow. Now, I'm not saying they have the plan for doing that, but people have in the past, and no one seemed to like it.
You know, in their worldview, wouldn't the plan be like, oh, let's just pump a ton of CO2 into the atmosphere so there's less, I mean, there won't be, but so they can argue like there's less crops, people starve, and problem solved. Like, and then they can even blame it on us. Like, we told you what to do, you didn't do it, and all this mass death is your fault. And even though that wouldn't happen.
The movie Soylent Green was set in 2022, and here we are. We're talking about euthanasia and all that stuff.
Yeah, so
composting people. We're talking about composting people now in some states and countries.
Jim, I know you have a methane story queued up here. We want to talk about Biden's methane plan. Actually, I'm thinking before we actually do the story, I have it stinks. I have a video here of Biden actually announcing it during his speech this morning. Let's get the announcement, and then let's go with the story if that's cool with everyone. So one quick moment. We're kind of dual producing. It actually works well.
Our ambitions and the speed of our efforts. The science is devastatingly clear. We have to make vital progress by the end of this decade. And that's why the United States is rallying the world around climate game changers. I launched one such game changer last year in the European Commission President von der Leyen, the Global Methane Pledge. We started it with the EU and 8 other countries. In Glasgow, it grew to more than 100 countries. Now more than 130 countries have signed on to covering more than half of the global methane emissions. Methane is 80 times more potent than carbon, and it accounts for nearly half of the net warming we're experiencing now. So cutting methane by at least 30% by 2030 can be our best chance to keep within reach of 1.5 degrees Celsius target.
All right, Linnea, you were shaking your head the whole time. I have got to hear what you were thinking.
Anthony probably has the same idea as I do. Methane is a bad choice for this push if you really believe in the climate stuff. So if you use methane alone, then yes, it is a more potent greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. However, our atmosphere contains one worse, water vapor. Water vapor covers much of the same spectrum of absorption that methane does. Yeah. And it is, so basically the water vapor gets it first. And the methane contributions don't add as much as a full methane on its own would.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Anthony?
I agree with what you're saying there. Yeah, methane is really a non-problem for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's only got a 9-year residence time in the atmosphere, and some scientists say it's even shorter than that. It tends to get broken up, by ionization in the atmosphere, ultraviolet light, stuff like that, and it doesn't really have a lot. There's not a lot of methane in the atmosphere. Here's a graph that shows the concentration of methane in the atmosphere. Andy, if you can bring that up. The concentration of methane in the atmosphere is measured in parts per billion, okay? Not parts per million, parts per billion. And so, can we see that graph?
Yeah. Jim, do you have it? Or let's see if I got it here. One moment.
Okay, so anyway, the problem that we've got is the same thing. No, not that one, the other one. The other one that shows the rise in methane.
Nope, this is not it.
In any event, the point is that they're looking at these magnified graphs, and these magnified graphs showing, parts per billion going up, and it looks hugely steep. And people that don't understand science or don't even understand basic math look at this and go, oh my God, methane is going off the charts. And they freak out about it. People like Biden that don't have a clue and can't even find a bathroom on most days simply look at this and go, it's out of control. Well, gosh, it's gone from 1650 to 1850 or 1900. But this is parts per billion, not it's not a huge concentration increase. And so that's the problem. They don't understand that there's really not a lot of methane in the atmosphere. And for a while, between 2000 and 2005, it didn't change at all. So what's going on? We were doing lots of drilling during that time. So it can't be, remember the whole drill baby drill thing? Well, that was going on between 2000 and 2005. So what happened? Was it the oil industry that pumped it up? No, it's natural changes going on. Now let's look at this other graph that shows the distribution of how methane is produced on the planet. And what you'll find is that man is not the biggest culprit at all. Wetlands are. Wetlands produce more methane than anything. And so what are we going to do? Go strike down the Waters of the United States law so we can drain all the wetlands so we don't get methane? Well, if you really want to reduce methane, that's where you should go. But you can see here, wetlands are the biggest contributor. And yes, man does contribute some methane, but again, we're talking parts per billion. They're after a non-problem, but they're focusing specifically on the oil and gas industry because they view them as evil and wrong, and so they're going after the gas and oil wells to limit those methane leaks. They just got a new tool, a new satellite that's able to pinpoint methane leaks in the atmosphere, and they've been all over the press in the last week, pointing out these different oil fields and so forth have methane leaks. And so now we've got to do something to stop that. It won't make one bit of difference.
It's so funny.
No, you're wrong. You're wrong about that.
I love when we disagree. Go.
You're wrong about that. It won't make a big difference in climate. None of this stuff will. But what it will make a big difference is in our energy prices. It will either shut down wells or pipelines or make the operating well. The industry has cut.
Sterling, we're losing you again.
Fracking was going up.
Yeah.
And emissions were going down. Why? Natural gas became more valuable. There was less flaring. And more of it was stored, more of it was shipped because more of it's used. Yeah. If we stop using natural gas for electricity, what are we going to do with the gas seeps that continue? Oh, we're going to cap them. Well, cap them at a high expense, and our energy prices are going to go up. So it will have one big impact. The impact will be higher and higher energy prices.
Props to Gary on that comment. Sterling, you probably didn't see it, but your internet's gone down every now and then. He just puts up on screen. I got it. Sterling's window is down, and so you're just not getting the power you need for a stable connection. That was great. I loved that. So recently, before I do this, please stop me if there's something we need to cover. But in recent weeks, we've kind of dedicated the last 15 minutes or so to just you all putting on questions and us addressing them. Whatever you have right away. So I just say right now, get whatever questions you can in. We really actually enjoyed this section of the episode. Prior to that, is there anything that we're missing? I mean, I know we have more material and stuff. We've already gone 48 minutes.
While we wait for questions, I want to mention real quick the John Kerry thing because I found it pretty funny.
Okay.
So John Kerry is promoting carbon offset and carbon credits between nations again. This is an idea that's been tried and has been implemented many different places.
Yeah.
But there's one that I'd like to highlight because it is, to me, extremely funny and so Eastern European of a money-making method. So basically, the European Union and other parts of Europe joined in a agreement that they would trade carbon credits. Basically, you could generate a carbon offset credit or a carbon credit if you reduced emissions in some way. And then you could sell it to other countries.
Thank you, Linnea.
Well, what Ukraine did and what also Russia did was they started basically burning trash and coal slag and stuff. And then they would stop burning it. And it would generate a carbon credit, and then they would start burning it again, and then they would stop, and they would generate a carbon credit. And they were reporting that they were reducing emissions, but what they were doing was they were emitting more on purpose so that they could reduce it back down to what they were before they started emitting more. and basically just making an infinite money printer for them.
My respect of Russia has just skyrocketed. I'm not gonna lie.
We had a similar.
Even Sterling's dog loves it.
No, that's not my dog.
Oh, all right, never mind.
We had a similar situation here in the U.S. It wasn't with carbon credits. So the EPA keeps ratcheting down standards for various things, and they ratcheted down water standards, water pollution standards. The problem was a town in Alaska already was producing water cleaner than the standards, but the EPA didn't take that into account. They just said everyone has to reduce pollution by a certain percent.
Yep.
And so what they did is they started dumping fish waste into their streams, and then they captured it, and they said, "Oh, we've reduced it." And EPA said, "Oh, that's great. You did what you were supposed to do." So, when you can't make it any cleaner than it is, but you still got to by law, you dirty it up and then clean it up.
Yeah, it's just amazing how government can create more problems than they solve. Particularly like this, where, they have a standard and the standard must be met. And no, we're not going to make any exceptions because the standard is pure and all this other garbage. And so that's what we're faced with in the future. Even if we get all of the emissions reduced and everything else, these government agencies will still be around, and then they're going to start going after everyday things like perfume. Oh, we've got to reduce perfume emissions. We've got to reduce the emissions from cheese. Oh, cheese! It stinks.
Now you're freaking me out. It stinks.
That's the kind of craziness they'll be after.
No, actually, though, I think you're right. I'm not going to get into the actual specifics of this, but I've always felt that the left wing is essentially. I mean, the right wing is the same as the left wing, but the left wing is just flooring the gas pedal at all times, while the right wing is just they got their foot on the brakes. Sometimes I'll admit, the left was right, and the right's all right, you were right. Now let's stay here, while the left's no, we need to double down and get really crazy with this. I can't say what I really want to say here, but it kind of goes along to what you're saying. They'll do these policies, and then immediately they'll go into we need to ban cheese. It's just slow down. At least slightly lower your foot off the gas pedal. And the left isn't right on this issue, but just flooring it even more is just so indicative of that platform. I haven't paid too much attention yet. If there's any good questions and comments we want to address, I'm not sure if any of you have looked on screen. I'm looking now. Let's see. We got the Obama alone has a 30 million in beachfront homes. Yes, he does. Martha's Vineyard, right on the coastline. It's a great place.
He was very worried about rising seas when he bought that home.
I mean, just as worried as it was about COVID when he threw just a massive party while all the lockdowns were going on. But the rules are for us, not for them. Let's see. So we got carbon credits. What about the? I'm not sure about the. I don't know much about this. I don't know if anyone wants to touch this topic.
Biogenic methane, so more bacterium-produced methane. I mean, you don't even have to talk about that specific reaction. You can just talk about, the first thing that pops into my mind is you can get some of this being generated in water wells and stuff. And at least in Colorado, a lot of the time, that's what people were finding that they were blaming on fracking, was they were discovering biogenic methane in their water wells. And, the EPA came in and tested and said, no, this couldn't have come from the oil and gas operations because this is just bacterium-produced methane. But they still went on the news, and the news still repeats that it was because of fracking. So
what? That's such a surprise.
Yeah.
All right, let's see if we got anything else in here that's worth talking about. A mega volcano exploding. I mean, we did a good bit on volcanoes last week. Why doesn't anyone look into weather modification? I mean, I think that's what the left is.
I want to say right here and now.
Okay,
weather
sweet.
modification is not possible. It's simply not. They've tried it. It works sometimes, maybe enhances rainfall a little bit. There is no weather modification. There is no effect from HARP, HARRP. There is no effect from chemtrails or any of that other garbage. Weather modification doesn't exist. So That's all I'm going to say.
But that's what they're trying to do. That's what all of this
That's
climate
what, yeah,
stuff
that's
is trying
what
to
I wanted to say.
modify the weather. That's trying to do. Look, humans have been trying by the weather to suit their taste for as long as human societies have formed.
Yeah, with the weather dance.
They sacrificed in volcanoes, or they did the weather dance, or they sent up
I actually think that was more effective.
I still think if they threw politicians into volcanoes, that would help.
Yeah,
I think was it?
Sorry, we interrupted you.
It would reduce the hot air. It would reduce the hot air.
Linnea, you were saying something?
Was it Stan Goldenberg who came in here and said that, like, anyone who thinks that, you know, we're going to stop a hurricane or something by detonating a nuclear bomb in it doesn't realize the energy level of a hurricane is way more than a nuclear bomb. Like, it would be basically nothing in comparison.
I don't remember hearing that, and that is really interesting. Just to okay.
He's like, all you do is throw radiation around inside of the storm, but it wouldn't do anything to the storm itself, because the storm's energy is way higher than anything that we've got.
Yeah, that's funny. Let's see. All right, there was another one. Oh, someone wrote, this isn't exactly climate related. Obama Netflix contract, $52 million. This isn't exactly climate, but I do want to comment on this. And this is just so indicative of the way our political system works. You'll hear the argument like, presidents, they're not even paid a massive amount. Like, they're public servants. Sure. But then when you are president, you go in there. I swear, I'll keep this to 1 minute and I'll be done. You try to pass net neutrality, which basically made it so Netflix wouldn't have to pay increased costs to use what was at the time over than half of all internet traffic was Netflix. So that's during Obama's presidency. He pushes this policy that benefits them greatly. And then suddenly when he's out of office, he gets a $52 million documentary. The whole argument that these people aren't being paid a lot, so they really are public service. No, they're literally altering the course of America to get massive payouts after. In the climate field,
the good old
Al Gore.
Yep. Oh yeah,
Al Gore, the inventor of the internet, right?
Right, inventor of the internet. I mean, the guy that made the channel that was supposed to be all about climate stuff and then sold it to Al Jazeera. Like, I just really wanted to comment on that one.
It's the good old book sales trick.
Wait, what's this mean?
When presidents and Congress critters and everything, they're all writing books all the time.
Yeah.
And who's buying these? There's not that many people buying these that they're making millions and millions off of these book sales. So there's something going on with that, I swear.
That's a good point. I mean, what happened? The Hillary story.
Or like Hunter Biden selling art.
Hunter Biden is selling art? Oh man, I mean, I'm sure if you smoke enough crack, you're just like, I have a great idea. Let's see. We got anything. Have you guys seen any comments you wanted to touch? Is this in 70s? That's one. Paving the cities and I mean, that'd probably warm up the temperature due to the urban heat index. Let's see. No Jewish space lasers. I'm just quickly browsing through here. So I'm not sure if any of you want to discuss this. I mean, if we don't, we got a ton that we can always go through. Anyone want to go on this one?
Well, we're already at an hour. We're already at over an hour now.
That's we're at 58, but all right, you're right. It's and then I'm just gonna show this on screen because it's funny. Awesome. Well, thank you all for joining Climate Change Roundtable live every Friday, except for the weeks we're not live because there's conferences or something going on. I've been saying this the last few weeks, but there we go. This is a good one.
Yeah, this is what COP27 is all about.
Yeah, even though I think a lot of people there don't even think they're saving humanity. I think they're just like, oh no, I have an urge to rule. But I fully agree with this. But I've been saying,
really like going on taxpayer-paid vacations to cool exotic locations.
Yeah, to Egypt, like
that could be part of it too.
Yeah, H.L. Mencken. Well, you might end with Bill Peckney's comments on, because he's actually was part of an attempt to modify the country.
To what? We lost you.
Project Storm Fury 69. Yeah.
Let's see. Huh. I got nothing to add here if anyone else does.
I was just reading it.
Oh, okay. Well,
then,
yep.
And then his next result was no noticeable result. He just confirms what Anthony said.
Yeah. Well, all right, I'll continue my wrap up, the 2-part wrap up. I have been telling you all recently that we're doing our international conference on climate change in Orlando, I believe, February 23rd to 25th. So we would love to have you all there. Like, seriously, you can interact with all of us. We'll all be there. Talk with us. Give us your thoughts on the show. And also, like, outside of that, I've gone to a few, and the ones I haven't gone to, I've watched online. Like, if you are interested in this, like, in climate change, instead of watching us every week, which continue to do, you'll get like the experts in their fields just all going through exactly what they know best, and it's illuminating in just so many ways. So I highly recommend, if you can't go, you at least tune in. We'll be live streaming the whole thing. Yeah, I mean, that's what I got to say about that. But go to heartland.org if you are interested in looking at tickets or figuring out live stream stuff. We'll have it all there. Outside of that, we do want to do an episode in the future where, honestly, we just take your questions the entire time and just respond to what you guys want to ask us. I don't know if it'll be next week, but it is on the docket. So, maybe we'll start with like a 5-10 minute, just like what happened this week bit. But after that, we just kind of want to talk about what you guys want to talk about. So keep that in mind. If you have any questions, keep them in the back burner for the next week or two. And that's what I got. So we will catch you all next week. Peace.